Thank you very much, Sean. Appreciate that. And once again, a very warm welcome to all of our attendees this morning. We really appreciate over the past year that you've supported us so well. In fact, over the past 2 years of having these Toolbox talks, we've really developed some great relationships with the attendees, the FEM members, IOPSA members, and even some of the SIOSH members who have joined through this year. So we just want to take this opportunity to say thank you very much, obviously, to FEM and IOPSA. Obviously, this is the second last Toolbox talk of this year. Next week on the 3rd of December will be the final one. But we look forward to continuing having this relationship with each and every one of you. As long as you reach out, give us some of that criticism, suggestions, comments, please don't forget to do that. We really want to improve these sessions for you, those out there in the industry, regardless of what industry you're in, whether you're in the plumbing industry, members of FEM in various industries, as well as SIOSH members in the occupational health and safety industry. We really appreciate your feedback. So this morning, monitoring and reviewing, we are going to be discussing what is it that we need to monitor and review when it comes to our occupational health and safety systems. Now, I'm speaking to obviously a lot of employees out there, and you might say, well, I'm not responsible for the actual health and safety monitoring or reviewing part of the system, but your input is invaluable when it comes to the monitoring and reviewing process. Now, why is that? Well, let us first understand what monitoring and reviewing is, and then we're going to see what portion your assistance and your reports actually play in giving us the best quality monitoring and reviewing procedure. For one, monitoring or to monitor something is to observe and check the progress or quality of something over a period of time, as well as keeping it under a systematic review. So monitoring and reviewing always work side by side. But the term review or the word review basically means a formal assessment of something with the intention of instituting change if necessary. Again, looking at that progress or quality of any particular part of a company. So whether you're doing the financial side, the HR side, whether you're looking at procurement or even at the operational side, even the health and safety side, each one has its own monitoring and reviewing procedure. But what does it mean for us in health and safety? And what does it mean for you, those out there in the industry, whether you're an employee, an employer, the person in charge of the health and safety system or managing the health and safety system, or the person in charge of just implementing it through a safety file on site? Well, it basically means to manage safety, and that's what you've been doing throughout the entire year. But we need to also ensure that things like incident tracking is monitored in order to check the effectiveness of our safety management system. In other words, simply put, is it working? When it comes to the risk assessment, have things changed? Has the environment changed? Are we using different tools or even different people? Perhaps a SANS code that we might have used in the past has been updated for the installation of some sort of plumbing equipment. Well, this would generate a change of understanding or perhaps a change of procedure. This would mean we need to update the way we work on these systems. Worksite inspections, employee qualifications, training, actionable items, and even the tracking of these items are all necessary monitoring tools. Now we ask you, as the employee, those actually working on site, where do you fall as part of someone who's going to assist in the monitoring and reviewing process? Well, it's very simple. The only information that is gathered really from a safety system comes from you, the employee. Filling in those registers and checklists every day, every week, every month, and generating a system of works is where this information comes from. Giving us more information or enlightenment on how you do the work so that the risk assessment, method statements, safe work procedures can all be updated. You see that the definition of a review is a formal assessment of something with the intention of instituting change if necessary. So we monitor it. We check to see, is it still effective? Is it still adequate? Is it still working for you, the employee? However, you, the employee, are the ones giving us feedback to tell us it's not working or it is working. And this is done largely through different types of indicators. But let's take a look now at some of the documents that you might be looking at in order to monitor certain aspects of the health and safety system. Now, obviously, I might be speaking to those of you who are working with a health and safety system, and you might understand this. But as employees, if you are not actually working with this, try to see what needs to be done, what information needs to be recorded, so that you can give this information to the responsible person. Now, the reason for this is in an initiative to work as a team. All of us want to work as a team in the company to prevent incidents and accidents from happening, as well as ensuring the safe working systems of each person that is involved in a specific task. And that includes you, even though you might not be actively involved in the monitoring of an actual system. Now, this is just 10 out of the 40 or 50 odd documents that we monitor every year, every month, sometimes every day. And you can take a look at number one. We always have our OHS policy and objectives as number one. And you'll see there the frequency of monitoring this is every single year. We've also got a HSE system reference number. So that's 4.2. We know that within our reference, our entire management system, section number 4 is going to deal with all these policies and procedures and the flow of how safety is done within a company. We've also got our legal reference. Where do we find the reason why we have an OHS policy? And that comes from the Occupational Health and Safety Act, Section 7. We then give the responsibility to a certain person. In this case, we've assigned it to the managing director as well as the SHEC manager in order to sit down and monitor and review the policy and objectives. And then sampling method of how to go about this, simply put, is just review the OHS policy. Now, this might be very simple as picking up the OHS policy and reading through it. However, what is being said in the policy, what goals and objectives are being set, and then we monitor what is being done on site. Now, this is where you, the employee, come into play. We want to see if what is set by the company is being done on site. Now, you can see how a system that says we are zero tolerant of any incident and accident, but then we look at our statistic report and we say, well, we've had quite a few incidents and accidents. Where's the gap? And how can we close or minimize that gap to prevent it from happening again? Now, oftentimes the SHEC manager and the MD, they are not responsible for the actual work on site. And so this teamwork needs to be developed and a very good relationship needs to be kept from both parties. For those in the health and safety side, since you are not doing the work, don't get frustrated when certain things don't come to you straight away. Work as a team, obviously always having diligent respect for each other, and this will go a long way in providing a more streamlined monitoring and review process for the entire system. Now, this is generally done throughout the entire year. As you can see, the second part of our monitoring system or list of monitoring tools that we have is an accident and incident recording, as well as investigating both incidents and accidents. And you'll notice the frequency there is as needed. In other words, as soon as an incident or accident happens, depending if it's a Section 24 incident or just a normal near miss or first aid injury, there's a list of procedures that we need to follow in order to ensure that this is frequently monitored. Now, as needed does not mean when we want to do it. It means when the system requires it to be done. Now, if we are working according to an actual system and a safety file can be part of the system, there are many different aspects that will interconnect, in other words. So as in employees and an employer, those responsible for health and safety and those responsible for implementing the health and safety will then at times always overlap. And it's at these places where this overlapping is extremely important when it comes to clear and accurate, truthful information. This is the only way you will be able to adequately check if your system is working for you. Remember, it's observing as well as checking something over a period of time. Now, if you just go to something like the training needs analysis, which is number 5, this is also done every year. It's not just to check whether you've been trained in first aid, firefighting, shear rep, emergency evacuation coordinator. It goes a lot further than that. It's an analysis of what is needed for the company. And an analysis is generally done ahead of time and not after the fact. And this is what we call leading indicators. How do we go from one point to the next? And this is where the review part of the entire system comes into play. So let's explain this to you very, very briefly. The primary purpose of a review or measuring health and safety performance is in order to provide, first of all, adequate and accurate information. And on what? It is on the progress of our system, as well as the current status of the system. And this includes the strategies, the processes, as well as the activities of that entire safety system. Now, this is all in order to control risk. So again, it's all risk-based. We are managing to protect you, each person that is part of the system, including an employer and an employee, on keeping you safe within a system. The only way we know if it's working is to check if it's working. It's to monitor if it is working, much like a car needs to be monitored and reviewed. In other words, you need to daily check tires, you need to daily check your brakes, are your indicators working, are the lights working, and then annually or when the service intervals come up, you will then send it into a professional for more help. The same is true with the health and safety system. We do certain things, small inspections and checks along the way. And then perhaps every year, every 2 years, every 3 years, depending on how our system is set up, we then get professionals in to assist us with a much deeper inspection. And this will then give you an action list, an action item list of what to fix. Can that professional assist you with fixing it? Oftentimes they can, but many times it falls on you as the company to implement these changes. Remember, a review is a formal assessment. In other words, we actually need to do an assessment of our lagging indicators and our leading indicators. Now, this might sound like Greek to you. Don't worry. Very, very simple. A lead indicator, in other words, it's an indicator of is it working or is it not working, and what is the progress. A lagging indicator is done after the fact. After an incident, after an accident. This is a reactive form of health and safety. It's a good form of it, but it's not the form that we want to rely on all the time. However, it does give us very accurate information if that information is gathered correctly. But our leading indicator is done before. In other words, it's a proactive approach toward health and safety. And these are things like risk assessments. We go out and identify what could possibly go wrong when it comes to potential risks and hazards on site, and we try to prevent it from happening so that we do not have to react. But we still need to have a reactive procedure in case something happens. And that is why you will have a risk assessment and an emergency plan. These two work together in order to monitor the before the result as well as after the result. And what we are hoping to achieve is that the reactive side is a lot less than the proactive side. But then again, when we look at reactive situations, we also want to ensure that reactive increases when it comes to certain responsibilities of employees. Now, here's just a very small example. On the bottom of the page, if you take a look at the incidents and accidents chart over there, we've got 4 different types of incidents: a near miss, a first aid, a major, and a fatality. Now, depending on how your company is set up, you might have it slightly different. But where do we get these statistics? Well, near misses, we can only get from you, the person actually going through that near miss. You have to input that information. It's not a thumb suck where we feel this might have happened. It needs to be genuine results. First aid cases come from the actual first aid register inside the first aid box, which is captured by a first aider. Now, if you take a plaster, well, you need to fill in that register. If that register is not being filled in, we are not getting the results in order to check what is actually happening. Major incidents normally come to the attention of everybody, including things like fatalities. So that type of information is generally gathered fairly easily. But where would we want to start with the reactive procedure? Would it not be right from the start, from the near misses, from the first aids, so that all of that information is gathered in order for us to inspect and check what is happening, the progress of the system? Well, that really is reliant on you, the employee. And that is why sometimes when we speak to guys out in the industry, they often say, there's too many registers and checklists. And we feel for you, we understand it. We also have a lot of registers and checklists to go through. In fact, every year it's a lot of paperwork. But if we can streamline it, in other words, sit down and see how it can be done better. Make a suggestion. And if it can work and it is still effective, why not implement it? If it is not as effective, stick to what is working. Use what is in front of you, monitor, review, and protect yourself from future incidents and accidents. So reactive has its place, proactive has its place as well. But now you might be asking, well, where do I start? Where do I go from here? Maybe you've never done something like this before. And if you're running a small health and safety system, perhaps you are one person in a bucky with a small team, and you think, well, I'm not a big company, I don't need this type. Well, that just means your monitor and review procedure will be very short. However, it still needs to be done. So where do you start? Well, just do a systematic check on your current system. Do you have everything in place in order to keep you safe? And is it according to minimum requirements? Now, again, if you need help with that, we've got a small checklist that you can use. We can hand that through to you, and you can literally tick it off like a tick box. Do I have these certain things? Then outline what positive results have come from implementing these things, the good things that have happened, and try and keep positive. It's very important in health and safety to be positive about results. But now you also want to ensure that you look at any suggestions on improvements that can be made. Perhaps additional toolbox talks that can be done, more training, a different type of risk assessment or a more aggressive risk assessment, different types of registers and checklists. Perhaps some were missing throughout the year. These are the improvements that you want to note down. Then look at your policies, your procedures, and see if you can update them with the new improvements that you need to set as a new goal or target. Formalize that policy and work towards improvement for 2020. Now, that is what you need to do in the next few weeks. Once this document is in place, there's nothing you can do over December. Go and enjoy your holiday, have a fantastic time. But when you come back, this document then is already sitting there waiting to be implemented. And you have already learned from last year. Don't wait until after the holidays because you might have forgotten a lot of what has occurred already. Write it down now while it is still fresh in your mind. Well, thank you very much. There's a lot more we can chat to you about monitoring and reviewing. If you want some more information, please drop me a mail and I'll get back to you with any questions that you might have. Next week is the last Toolbox Talk for 2019, and we want to say a very big thank you to IOPSA and FEM for sponsoring these Toolbox Talks every Tuesday morning. We are also happy to announce that these will continue for 2020. So the new year, we will continue to have these Tuesday morning Toolbox Talks, and we will send out when these will be happening, obviously every Tuesday, we'll just give you those start dates. Next week is our final Toolbox talk about closing out, and we also have some great news for our IOPSA members, some new specials as well as some discounts coming your way. So please don't forget to tune in next week, and ask all IOPSA members to tune in for the announcement that will happen right at the end of the last Toolbox talk. Again, thank you to SAOSH as well as their members for crediting this Toolbox talk with CPD points. And from ourselves at OHSS, please start safe, work safe, and let's finish this year safely as well. We look forward to seeing you next week on our final topic, that is closing out. And we want to say thank you very much to all of you attendees for taking the time out of your day. Sean, I'll go ahead and hand it over back to you.
100%. Thank you very much, Chris. Well, there's nothing else for me to say, guys. I just want to say from my side, thanks so much for joining us throughout the year. As Chris did say, next week is our final session for 2020, but we will be returning within the first couple of weeks of January. Currently, I think it is scheduled for the week of the 13th. Right, for us to start the Toolbox Talks up again. But guys, you will see in the survey after the session, there is a question which asks you when you think you would like the sessions to restart. So you can go ahead and you can put your input in there, and we will definitely bring that in to consideration. Other than that, guys, I am going to go ahead and end the session off now. Thanks again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye, guys.